Hello and welcome to A Stitch in Time. Today is Wednesday, August 23rd, 2017, and this is episode 29. My name is Carol and I am known as Knits and Pearls on Ravelry. You can find the show notes for this and every episode on the blog at astitchintimepodcast.blogspot.ca, or you can also find them in the episode thread in the Ravelry group, and that can be found by searching A Stitch in Time Podcast under the Groups tab. Come by, show us what you're making. I love to see people's projects. And also you can join in the Agatha Christie Along, which is a perpetual knit along. It'll run as long as it takes me to read my way through my Agatha Christie collection. And I'm only about a quarter of the way through. Knit or crochet anything that you can tie into Agatha Christie, whether it be one of her characters or the title of her book or Agatha Christie herself. And each month I will draw from all of the entries and right from the beginning right to the end of the cal, and I will award the winner a pattern worth $10 or under US that is giftable on Ravelry. So come by and check us out. I can't believe it's August 23rd. Where did this summer go? Been a couple of weeks since I spoke to you and I'm feeling a little rusty, so bear with me. Got lots to talk about today. I've got one finished project. You'd think I'd have more after all that time, but just one. And lots of works in progress, both knitting and, I actually have a finished project in sewing, so I will talk a little bit about that and what I'm reading these days, and also what's been going on for the last couple weeks. So settle in with your favorite beverage, whether it be hot or cold. It's very warm here today again, so you can tell. So I'm just drinking some water. I'm trying to drink more water these days, or try, you say, stay hydrated, right? Some days I do better than others. Okay, so let's get to it. My finished project, as far as knitting goes, are my Blind Venus socks, and here they are. I love them. I love the bright colors. The yarn is from Opal, and it's the Hunter Twassers series. So there's, right there's the label, and this colorway is based on this painting, Blind Venus. Oh, it's Blind Venus something. Let me see if I can, I know I wrote it in my notes a few weeks back. Blind Venus Inside Babel. So that's the painting that the colorway is based on. And in addition to this yarn, I also used, oops, can put that over there. For the heels, I used West Yorkshire Spinners Signature 4-ply in the Cayenne Pepper colorway. You can see it's a little bit orangier than this red, but that's okay, and it's actually a little bit less obvious in real life. But yes, I love how these turned out. I will enjoy wearing them for sure. And I kind of thought it was neat when I was doing them that the heel or the toe more or less just started or ended off where the, doesn't make sense. I started with this one strand of yellow for the cast on, and it began this blue. So I went through all the colorway basically, I guess three times through, I guess. Yeah, so anyway. Enough about those. There's a lot to say about one pair of socks. So that was good. So as always, when I cast off a pair of plain vanilla socks, I like to cast on another one right away so that I have some easy knitting for watching TV or riding in the car. And I did quite a bit of riding in the car the last couple weeks, so I needed another project. So this one is out of Regia, Arnie Carlos design line, and this is colorway 3762 Forest. So it's very pretty. I really like how these are knitting up. give you a good look at the colorway there. So you can see it's blues, a bit of gold, a bit of green. I am making these for my oldest sister for her birthday, and her birthday's in January, so I've got lots of time. I like to knit my gifts sort of all year long. And these just look like her colors, and she really likes my hand knit socks, so I always give her a pair of socks for her birthday. So what I thought was kind of interesting with this is she's got a wider foot than I do, and so I have to do 72 stitches for her sock, where I do 64 for my own. And I found it interesting, there's a few places where at this gauge and this number of stitches, the single line of knitting, or a single line of pattern, doesn't quite line up. But it is what it is. You can see it again here. I don't think she'll mind. I don't think most people will notice, but I don't know if I've really come across that before to this extent. So maybe I don't know if I'm knitting loosely or what. See, it's like that too on this one. But that's okay. She won't mind. And I think the overall effect is really pretty. I like this this yarn, so I'm enjoying knitting them. I have about, I'm just slightly further on this one than this one, like literally a matter of just a few rows. And I think I'll knit, I think there's about another inch to go before I do the heel flap and gusset on these. And so, yeah, coming along nicely with those. I got most of this just done in just a couple of days, or a couple of trips in the car. So, there you go. What else do I have to talk about? Oh, yes, my socks for the Grocery Girls August sock bash. I decided on a fire theme this month just because we've had crazy wildfires in British Columbia this summer, and as if you've been watching, you know, some of them have, or one of them in particular has affected our family in quite a personal way, so it's something that was on my mind. So I looked for a pattern with a fire theme, and I found one called Girl on Fire by Cookie A. And then I chose this yarn by Manos del Uruguay called Alegria, and it's in the Fuego colorway. Fuego means fire. So I've got quite a bit done on these since the last time. I have one whole sock already knit. And the yarn, it comes out very orangey when I'm looking here. That's quite bright and orangey, but as you can see, there's a more of a bright red and a deeper red, and then it's got a bit of brown and almost a light corally peachy color. That's not white, it's actually more coral that runs through. So as always with variegated yarns, when you do a heel flap and gusset, you end up with a bit of pooling around the ankle area because you're changing stitch counts for a while. But then once it was done, you can see it became quite a bit more regular, the striping, or almost striping. So that's one. And then I'm actually making quite a bit of progress. I have the second one done. I just finished the gusset decreases. So I'm have just the foot to knit now. And again, you can see some pooling here. That's quite a wide red stripe. And then you can see on the bottom a little bit more of the variegated. This one actually I'm happier with how it looks around the heel flap and gusset area, but they're fine. I don't like pooling, but I can overlook it sometimes in a case like this, because I just know it's really hard to change. If I've ever found it so that I just can't stand it, I sometimes will break the yarn and kind of manage the the way the color's knitting up, but this one, it suits me fine. So yeah, there you go. Almost done those. I'm starting to think about September socks, but haven't given too much thought. I think fall theme is quite an obvious one, so that's probably where I'll go. But you never know. Sometimes something just inspires me, and I'll run with that. So, all right. Thanks to some technical difficulties, I'm re-recording this section. So if the lighting looks a little different, it's because it is. What I'm going to talk about now as far as works in progress go it's a spoiler alert. I'm going to talk about the Very Busy Monkey Anthology Mystery Knit-Along, Socks, and the Shawl. So if you don't want to be spoiled, fast forward a little bit and start watching again when I talk about some other things. So I'll show you the socks first. This is the yarn I'm using, Hazel Knits Entice, and it's the Cirrus colorway, which is a lovely pale blue. So here they are. I've finished clue 3 on both socks. So as you can see, there's a really interesting cabled pattern, garter stitch background here, reverse stockinette stitch background here. The lines just keep moving, and there's a heel flap and gusset on these two. As you can tell, I am flapping my heels this week. I have, seems like all the socks I'm knitting have heel flaps and gussets. It's just interesting how I'm going through a stage where it's all similar construction, but I like heel flaps and gussets. But I also like short row heels. They both fit me well, so I do both. But yeah, it's interesting. All of a sudden, I've been knitting a lot of heel flaps. So anyway, to continue with this, so you can see the cable, and now what's starting to happen is there's a lace pattern starting down the foot. And I'm going to turn this around a little bit just so you can maybe get a better sense. There we go. And if the, I haven't really looked at the next chart, but if the shawl is any indication, it's kind of a leafy pattern. So, yeah, so that's where I am with those. So I have clue 4 to do, which brings you down the foot and you do the toe. So after the clue 4, they will be done. So yeah, well, again, last look. And what I did, because of the way that you knit, well, socks in general, anything in the round, there is a point where you move from one row to the next, and you notice it in stripes. There's a little jog sometimes, but also in garter stitch you will see a line where that happens, where you switch from knit to purl. And so what I did when I did the heel flap is I did one extra row so that that line I can hide in the inner part of my calf. So these, when I wear them, I will have this seam running along the inside of my leg instead of the outside. It's a small thing, and with the pants on, no one will notice anyway, but I kind of wanted to do that to make them more mirror image. So there you go. All right, and so as for the shawl, I am knitting the shawl in Madeline Tosh Merino Light in Begonia Leaf colorway. And it's a lovely purple. Now I know earlier when I recorded this, the color showed up quite well. We'll see what it does now. It's a little bit later in the afternoon. Actually, yeah, it's very well represented here. It's maybe just a little lighter and a little dustier in real life, but it's just quite accurate. So as you can see, like the socks, there's a, sorry, I just try to stretch it out on the needles. There's a cable section here. And then I think part of that was done, well, I know part of it had been done for clue 2. I'm about halfway clue 3 now. And here I'm beginning that lacy section also on clue 3 of the shawl too. And then like the socks, it incorporates a garter section, and actually looking at it, I can see it's going to kind of mimic this shape here. So that's interesting to compare them. You see how that's coming in like that? And then of course these cables, this type of cable, is also running through the shawl there. So that's what Stephanie Edding, she's very busy monkey. She always makes, she runs a mystery knit along, I think every summer, and the two patterns are always related, using similar stitch patterns. So yeah, that's actually a really good look at the cables there. I was worried that maybe this Tosh Merino Light didn't have a high enough twist to really show off the cabling. But now that I've done more of it, I'm not too worried. I think it shows up just fine, especially when it's blocked. It should all be just fine. So this is going to be a crescent shaped shawl. And I think it's really interesting too how she's shifted the increases. They used to be, when it began, you did the increases in the middle and then along each edge. And then the next section, they were done along these three cable sections. And now the increases for the shawl have been moved to this new lace section that runs adjacent to each of the three cable sections. So very clever design. I can't wait to get off the needles and then you can see it in its entirety. I think it's going to be really, really nice. I've more or less avoided spoiler pictures. So I did post my progress photos in the spoiler thread, but I didn't really look through it because I wanted these to be a true mystery and unfold as I knit them. I usually will peek ahead, so I saw like a quick glimpse of a couple of projects, but in general I'm kind of surprised as I work along, which is fun. All right, one more project to show you is Rune, the shawl by Helen Stewart. And this is the fourth shawl in the Shawl Society 2 pattern collection. And once again, the yarns for that, color A, the main color is Knit Picks Hawthorne Figuring in the Cosmic Speckle colorway. And then Luette Gems Fingering Weight in Caribbean Blue. I've made a fair bit of progress on this since I saw you last. I had company, and it was one that I found quite easy to work on around other people because a lot of it is just garter stitch. So I've been worked my way through the main body, and now I'm onto the border. So as I showed you last week, there's this, trying to get this against something dark, there's a little lace section that runs along the spine of the shawl, which represents runes, and that's carried down into the first part of the border too. I'm not sure if you can tell, there's the lace is being worked there too. And the first part of the border echoes this eyelet row. And then as the pattern shows, as you work down the border, there'll be some more eyelet lace and then a picot bind off. So I think I'm close to halfway through the border. I've knit this as written. I'd hoped I would have enough of the yarn to do one more stripe, just to use up as much yarn as possible, but kind of doing the math, I concluded I wouldn't have enough. And even if I had enough of the speckle yarn, I might not have had enough for the border if I'd added on those extra stitches. So it will be the size that it's originally supposed to be, and everyone says it blocks out quite a bit because it seemed quite small to me, but apparently with the garter stitch it blocks out quite a bit. So I think it should be a fairly substantial size shawl when it's done, and this is going to be a gift for my daughter. I think these colors are right up her alley, so that's where I am with that. And little bit about what's up and coming. I was really excited this week to learn of a new Carol Feller knit along. It doesn't start until October 7th, but I've ordered my yarn. I ordered it yesterday, and I'm quite excited to get going on it. So this is the sweater called Chimera, And it's a cardigan with quite a bit of texture to it. Just run that up so you get a sense. And the recommended yarn is Blue Moon Fiber Arts Cake Worsted. So I ordered it in the Bittersweet colorway, which is kind of an autumny red color. So I debated between that, and they had another color called Greige, which is what it sounds like, kind of a mix of gray and beige. So I thought, do I do a neutral? Do I do a color? And I just couldn't resist doing a color. I think it'll be a nice color for fall, and I'm a sucker for red. So I'm really excited about working on it. I'm going to be away the day that the first clue is released, but you can bet as soon as I get home I'll be casting it on. So there again, Chimera. Carol Feller never lets me down, so I'm sure it'll be great. So I actually have a bit of sewing this week. Okay, I'll make a long story short. I had knit this Green Gables top earlier this year, and I didn't really have anything to go with it, and I thought it'd be nice to have a print skirt that would complement it. So I found this fabric here, which I thought went really well with it. This dark color there is just the same. So I bought it, and I wanted a gathered skirt. I didn't want it too full, and I had a hard time finding a pattern. I used to sew for myself all the time. Out of high school, in high school I sewed a lot, and then my first job out of high school was at a fabric store, and I used to sew pretty well everything I wore. I haven't done a lot of garment sewing in the last few years, but certainly I can do a skirt. By surprised by the lack of choice in patterns. I really thought there would be more. I just wanted something quite a simple gathered skirt, not too full. Well, I ended up getting this one, Butterick 6326, and I did this view. And if you can see, it has a front and a back panel, and then it has a side panel also that's sewn in. And it has pockets, but I didn't do the pockets. And well, it's not terrible. It's a little bit fuller than I would like. The fabric is just too phrased too much for me to take this apart and redo it. But what I'm considering doing is going back to the store, and hopefully they have some more of this fabric, and buying a length, and then making another skirt that's a little bit more to my taste. I'll insert a picture here of me wearing it with my sweater. So as you can see, it's quite a full skirt, and while it actually the sweater lies nicely over it, if I wear this skirt with a t-shirt over it, you gather the skirt and then you put it onto a waistband, and then it's gathered up with elastic, and it's a lot of gathers around the waist, and if you wear it with a t-shirt, it just looks lumpy bumpy around the waist. It doesn't lie very nice. Where with the knitted sweater, it's a little bit heavier and it smooths over it. So I really do love the fabric. It's like polyester, I think. It's not cotton. And then I was thinking too, I have this yarn in my stash. I'm not sure if the color will show up quite right here. I'm just trying to... There we go, that's pretty good. You can see it's very much like this lighter pink that's in the fabric. And it's just a butterfly, Kurtzer butterfly Super 10. And I've had my eye on a couple of knitted tees by Valerie Hobbs. One in particular is the Garden Trellis tee, and I'm thinking about knitting that and having another knitted top to go with this skirt. Or go with a skirt. So yeah, I think I'm going to see if I can get another length of fabric. It was 60 inches wide, and I think I did this one, cost me like about $20. That's including the pattern, which is, I think it might have cost more than the fabric. So it won't be very much. It's not a very expensive semi-success, so but yeah, I like that. What else was I going to say about it? Oh, yeah, a little bit rusty laying things out. So I was looking at the back of the envelope and bought the fabric I thought was for this view, and it turned out it was for this narrow skirt. So I got home and I had to really lay it out carefully. Thankfully, I had to shorten the skirt, so that got rid of some length and then thereby some width where it flared out. But yeah, I had just had so much fun laying it out. It all worked at the end, thankfully, but just gives me an idea of how rusty I really am with sewing garments. Okay, what am I reading? Well, I finished Agatha Christie's Murder in 3 Acts, which is also known as 3-Act Tragedy. I think that's in the UK, it's known as that. And I actually really enjoyed it. It's been interesting reading these books through an order of publication because I'm more aware of recurring characters and things like that. So in this book, Mr. Satterthwaite makes an appearance, and he was one of the main characters in the Mr. Harley Quinn stories. Wherever Mr. Satterthwaite was, Mr. Harley Quinn showed up. So Mr. Harley Quinn does not make an appearance in this book, but Hercule Poirot does. And interesting too is that rather than take center stage in the solving of the or the investigating of the crime, in this case, Mr. Satterthwaite and a couple of other characters do a lot of the investigating, but in the end, Hercule Poirot does solve the mystery. So I thought it was a really interesting blend of characters that Agatha Christie did in this book. I can't remember what the next one to read is, but I haven't started it yet. Instead, I've been reading this book of short stories, Bernice Bobs Her Hair and Other Stories by F. Scott Fitzgerald. I was at the used bookstore with my mom and spotted it, and I had a number of years ago had heard this story read on the Craftlit podcast. I used to listen to a lot of audio podcasts, and Craftlit by Heather Ordover was one of them. I have no idea if she's still recording or not, or podcasting or not, but what was great about that podcast is she would either have some of her viewers record audio versions of books, or she would get others that had been recorded by other people, and they're all books or stories in the public domain. And Heather Ordover was or is, I think, an English teacher, and so she would discuss them as you would think an English teacher would. So I learned a lot about some of the, well, I was exposed to some literature I hadn't been before. I didn't take a lot of English in school, and also just learned more about works of fiction that I had read. And so I remember this one, really enjoying it. So the story, Bernice Bobs Her Hair, was a little bit different than I'd remembered, but I had the gist of it. And of course the ending is just as I remembered it, and if you've read it, you know what that ending is. So quite enjoyed that. I've read the second story also. The only other F. Scott Fitzgerald work I've read is The Great Gatsby, and of course that's really well known. So yeah, enjoying it. Also, these are also set in what's, the jazz age, as it says on the back cover. So very, obviously very evocative of that on the front. So yeah, enjoying that. Sorry, looking for places to put things. Also, I was out with my mom and looking just at the knitting magazines in the grocery store, and she insisted on buying this one for me. So, Knit Scene Fall 2017. I used to subscribe to Interweave, and I used to buy quite a few knit scenes and some Vogue, but I haven't been buying magazines lately. But this one has really nice, as you see on here, it has cardigans, and there are a few really nice cardigans. Also, this shawl I quite liked. So there were a couple of cardigans that especially caught my eye. One is the White Smoke cardigan. Beautiful cable detail down the back, and then also running down the front. And that's knit originally in a Barocco yarn called Cotolana. So as it sounds like, it has some cotton in it. So I think it's a Worcester or an Aran weight. I don't know if I'll make it in that yarn or not, or if I'll ever make it at all, but I would like to. But I thought that was interesting. And then this one also, a similar style, maybe that's why it caught my eye too. This is the Chili Pepper Cardigan by Bonnie Sennett, which I have several of her patterns. Actually, one of the ones that is in timeout, well, not even timeout, I just haven't worked on it for a while, are my couplet socks. That's a Bonnie Sennett pattern, and I like a lot of her things. So this one, no surprise, kind of a similar idea. The band, front detailed band down the a detailed band down the front. And this one also has that beautiful detail on the cuffs. And this one was originally made from Valley Yarns Northfield, which is a DK, I think it's a wool and silk blend if I remember right. And possibly what also caught my eye was the color, because I do love me some red. So yeah, I thought this was a really nice issue. There was another one that kind of, well, there's a lot of nice cardigans in here. I thought this one was kind of nice too, very comfy looking. So whether or not they actually get knit remains to be seen. I have, yeah, here's another classic, very classic cardigan. Yeah, whether they actually get knit, they have to get in line. I have a lot of other things I want to knit, but we'll see. So let's talk a little bit about what's been going on in my life for the last couple of weeks. To be honest, it's kind of a blur, and not sure how coherent this section will be, but yeah, so I think last time I spoke, my sister and her husband from Toronto were staying with us, and they were away for a couple of days visiting friends on Vancouver Island. And so they came back the night that I podcasted. So I think that's 2 weeks ago, Wednesday. And the next day, Jacqueline, my sister, and another sister, Janine, and my mom, we all went up to a place called Yale, which is a very small town now, but at its heyday, I think they said it was like 30 to 40,000 people. And it was a gold rush town in the 1860s, I guess. I think that's when gold was discovered. And so they have a old house that they've set up as a museum, and then they have, it's next to an old church, and they have another old house across the street that you can tour through, and on the grounds of that house they've set up a little tea house. So we went up and had lunch and then toured the historic site, and it was also a railway town because the Trans-Canada Railway was being built at the time. So, you know, I've driven through Yale countless times over the years. We have to go through it on our way to and from our vacation property, and as kids we often stop there for ice cream on the way there or the way back, but I've never taken the time to actually tour the museum and learn more about it. So I was really surprised at how large it had been in its heyday, because it's really tiny now. And something else you don't realize driving through is is most of the town is sort of below the highway, closer to the river. So when you go through the highway, what you see is just scratching the surface of what's actually there. So anyway, that was a really enjoyable day. And then that evening, a bunch of us got together at my sister Janine's house for, we just ordered Chinese food in for dinner and had one last family visit before Jacqueline and Ed took off Friday morning and went back home to Toronto. So that was about the same time as the next day. I think it was Saturday morning we got up and we could actually see outlines of our beloved mountains. For those who've been following this podcast the last month, British Columbia has had a terrible wildfire season, and we had smoke blow down from the interior of the province and just blanketing the whole area and obscuring our vision of I'm surrounded where mountains where I live, and we just couldn't see them at all. And the smoke was tough on the lungs for a lot of us, and so unfortunately Jacqueline and Ed missed seeing them at all while they were here, because they left, and I think it was that evening, Friday evening, it was just starting to break up. We had a breeze, and then by the next day it was quite a bit less. So yeah, we were so excited to see the mountains again. It was, now, I never thought about taking them for granted before, but we probably do. But when you don't see them, you really miss them. And then on that Sunday, my mom came to stay with us. So again, if you haven't been watching, because of the wildfires, my mom had been evacuated from the town where she lives. And so she's been, all in all, she was here for almost 5 weeks. She left when the evacuation alert was posted for their town, and then returned home last weekend. So anyway, while she was here, that whole week was just busy, different errands she wanted to do, and visiting with family, things like that. She ended up her time here knitting dishcloths. That was her thing. So she had bought a couple of big balls of the cotton yarn and knit dishcloths, and then she likes doing puzzle books, like different word puzzles. So she had bought a puzzle book, and so we would do those together. So definitely a change in my routine, but it was good to have her, and she kind of stayed with. I have 2 sisters that live here in town, so she stayed with all 3 of us for varying lengths of time. So last Tuesday, a week ago Tuesday, we got the word that the evacuation order had been lifted for where she lives. And she didn't want to leave right away. She wanted to, she wanted to see one sister had gone away, and she wanted to see her before she left, and then she wanted one last visit with my other sister in town before she left. So we arranged to go up Friday night. So it was very, very sobering to see how much damage had been done by this fire. We came into town, or we came up to... As we neared the place where the fire had begun, we could smell smoke quite strongly and see smoke in the distance. And then when we really saw what had burned along the highway, that area is a lot of dry grass and sagebrush, and interspersed with stands of forest. And so along the highway, a lot of it at first was just where it was all open, and the sage and grass, and had just been all burnt. And you could see places where fence posts were all charred, and sometimes the fences were falling over. And really it was just the tip of the iceberg, because the majority of the fire damage is away from the highway. And so what we saw was just a taste, but it was very sobering to see how far that fire have traveled and how far it's gone since. Pardon me. So that particular fire is called the Elephant Hill Fire, for those of you in British Columbia who are familiar with it. So it's now almost 170,000 hectares large, and it was very encouraging last week. We had a little bit of cooler weather, we had some rain, and the fire didn't grow for probably close to good half a week or more. They had contained it, and so that was good news. And looking at it this morning, looking at the report, there's been a bit of new growth since yesterday because of higher temperatures, less humidity, and they see variable winds. So it actually has grown a little bit since yesterday, but they're starting to get a handle on it. It's now 35% contained, so that's encouraging. So we drove my mom home and could see there's a ridge that runs along her town, and they were hoping to keep the fire on the other side of it, and in the end it did come over somewhat. And so you can see some of fire damage from where they did controlled burns, and see fire retardant, things like that. I tried to get some pictures. It's so difficult to capture. They just don't really tell the story. I'll put a couple of pictures in here. One is the ridge kind of from the end of my mom's street, zoomed in a little bit. There's a field and then the ridge. So you can see a little bit, and then the other one will be what she sees from across the street from her house. And you'll see a house in the picture and some smoky, like the ridge behind it with some smoke coming up. So I'll put them here. So that gives you it really doesn't give you a very good idea of just what damage was sustained there, unfortunately. But it was very sobering to see things as we drove along, and then to see the smoke still coming up from the hill behind the town. Now it's safe, it's being monitored. This is what's left over from the major burn that had happened, but they've been warned. They are still on alert because anything can happen. Fire season's not over. It's still hot and dry, and there are new fires that are started every day, sometimes unbelievably by people intentionally setting them. I can't even fathom that. Also, there was one a few weeks ago that was set by somebody probably throwing a cigarette out the window as they're driving down the highway. Like, I just don't understand how people still can't figure that out when highways are being closed and the air is full of smoke, and you'd still be so careless. Anyway, I guess that's all I have to say about that. So when we took my mom home, we also took a drive out to our family cabins just to check things over there. They had also been under evacuation order because one area of the fire had been threatening that region, but as it turned out, that area of the fire is well contained and no longer poses a threat. So we just checked things out. It was good that whole summer they haven't been used. It's kind of sad. But we're going to, my husband and I and a couple other family members are going to go up Labor Day weekend and spend the weekend there. That is, I think it's just a holiday in the United States and here, it's the first weekend in September. You get the Monday off, so. And then it's kind of, for most people, the last day of summer holidays before the kids go back to school on the Tuesday. Sorry, I can feel my voice is kind of froggy. So yeah, it'd be good to actually go up there and stay. While we were out looking around, it's just like, oh, I just want to stay out here. I really miss having been there this summer. Last time we were there was July 1st weekend, so it's been all summer. It's been so lonely. But boy, you could sure see how dry it is. It's the grass is just pale yellow, and it just light like that if anyone dropped a cigarette or a spark. So yeah, that's kind of what's going on here. It just, since we took my mom back, I've just kind of been settling into home, trying to catch up on some jobs that got neglected while she was here, housework. Tomorrow, we're supposed to get get cloudy overnight and get a few showers, so I've been reserving Thursday for getting out in the garden and weeding, while the ground will be a little bit softer and easier to pull weeds out of. And I have numerous flowers I have to deadhead and some plants that need trimming. So tomorrow's going to be gardening day, or at least the morning. It shouldn't take me more than a couple of hours. But I've been doing that, just settling back in, and just kind of getting back to normal after a couple of weeks of house guests. So hopefully by next week I should be able to record and maybe have maybe a couple of finished projects to show you. So we'll see how that goes. Yeah, in the meantime, take care of yourselves. Thank you so much for those who, I don't remember to say this every week, and I should. Thank you for your kind comments and communication. Thumbs up on YouTube. I really appreciate all of that. This has been the best. Meeting new friends, what I consider new friends, has been the best part of this whole podcasting venture of mine, and I really do appreciate the interaction. I know during the summer I've got way far behind on podcasts, so I know how hard it is sometimes to make time to watch them. So if you've been watching regularly, thank you for making me a part of your day or part of your summer. And now I'm just rambling. So thank you. Have a good week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye. Here comes one of my buddies. He comes every day. Usually they come in twos. I think it's a mom and a baby. They come and beg for peanuts. It's called a Steller's jay. It's our western blue jay. The one that's in the east looks quite a bit different, lighter blue. It's so funny, they'll pick up the peanuts, drop them, pick them up, drop them, try and find one that's just the right weight. It's a little bit skittish because I'm sitting right here. See if it comes closer. So you can see it's a beautiful deep blue plumage with a black head. I'll stop talking and see if it'll come closer. I think I'm freaking it out. Sitting up on the railing. Whoops, there it goes. I think I'll leave now so we can come back, get the rest in peace.